He never planned to start a journey with classical music. It happened in a quiet and simple moment, one of those evenings that feel ordinary at first, but later become unforgettable. He was sitting alone in his small room, with the window slightly open to let in the cool night air. The street outside had slowed down, and the usual noise of cars and people was fading away. He liked this time of the day because everything felt softer, calmer. His mind, however, was still busy thinking about work, life, and all the small worries that kept piling up on that night. As he scrolled through random videos on his phone without really paying attention, a soft piece of violin music started playing. He almost skipped it, but something about the first few seconds made him pause. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was gentle, warm, and full of emotion. The violin sounded almost like a human voice telling a story without words. He didn't know the name of the piece or the composer. He didn't even understand why it touched him so deeply. But in that moment, he felt his mind suddenly stop running in circles. He closed his eyes and listened. The music felt like a breeze moving through his thoughts, clearing the tension he had been carrying all day. Each note seemed to say something simple yet powerful, something he didn't know he needed. For the first time in a while, he felt peaceful, not excited, not distracted, just peaceful. When the music ended, he opened his eyes slowly. The room was still the same, but something inside him felt different. He replayed the piece again, and this time he listened with more attention. The rise and fall of the melody, the soft touches of the bow, the emotion hidden in every sound, it all felt real and comforting. After the track finished for the second time, he felt a strange curiosity growing inside him. He wondered if there were more pieces like this, more music that carried this kind of calm and emotion. He had heard classical music before. Of course everyone had, but he never listened with intention. He never felt the feelings behind it. That night, he searched for more. He found piano pieces, orchestral pieces, slow melodies, and uplifting ones. Some made him feel calm, some made him feel nostalgic, and some made him feel hopeful in a way he couldn't explain. He didn't know much about the composers, but he didn't need to. The music itself was enough. As he listened, he felt something gently shift in his life. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was small, but meaningful. It was like finding a quiet corner in a noisy world, a place where he could breathe without pressure. He stayed awake longer than usual that night, not because of stress, but because he didn't want the feeling to end. Every new piece felt like opening a window to a different moment in time. Some pieces sounded like early mornings filled with sunlight. Some sounded like rainy evenings when the world feels slower. Some pieces felt like stories of joy, others felt like stories of struggle. He realized music had a way of touching the heart without asking for permission. It could comfort, guide, and even heal in ways he never understood before. When he finally went to bed, he felt lighter. It was the first time in months that he slept deeply without tossing and turning. When he woke up the next morning, he remembered the feeling of the music more than the pieces themselves. A soft warmth stayed with him through breakfast, through getting ready for the day, and even through the small stresses he usually disliked. He didn't talk to anyone about it because it felt personal, like something he wanted to keep close for now. But throughout the day, he kept thinking about the violin piece from the night before, the way it lifted his mind, the way it calmed his heart. That evening, instead of watching random videos again, he searched for classical music with a bit more intention. He wanted to understand it better now. He wanted to find out why it touched him the way it did. He read about how classical music was made with emotion, patience, and care. He learned that many composers wrote their most powerful pieces during difficult times in their lives. Some wrote music when they felt lonely, some when they felt inspired, and some when they were going through deep personal struggles. Somehow, knowing this made the music feel even more real. Day after day, he continued listening. The more he listened, the more he realized that classical music wasn't just about instruments. It was about emotion. It was about life. It was about everything a person feels but cannot always say. Slowly, a new thought grew in his mind. It started small, almost like a whisper. What if he made a collection of the best classical music he could find? Not just random tracks, but a collection that held real feelings. A collection that someone could listen to when they needed comfort, calm, focus, or emotional support. He wasn't trying to be an expert. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He just wanted to gather the pieces that made his heart feel lighter, the ones that brought peace when things got heavy. One evening, while sitting with a cup of warm tea and listening to a slow piano piece, the thought became clear. He wanted to collect classical music the way people collect memories, carefully, lovingly, and with meaning. He imagined creating something that could help others the way the music had helped him. He wasn't sure how to start, but he felt excited in a calm and quiet way. He felt like he was walking into something new, something gentle and positive. He started making a small list of pieces he loved. Then he made another list of pieces he wanted to explore. He didn't use complicated rules. He simply followed what he felt. If a piece touched his heart, it went on to the list. If it helped him breathe easier, it stayed. This became a small habit in his daily life. He looked forward to coming home, making tea, and spending time discovering new music. He didn't think of it as a project or task. It felt more like a journey, one he didn't fully understand but knew he wanted to walk. His mind started to open in new ways. Music made him more patient. It made him more thoughtful. Even during stressful moments at work, he found himself remembering certain melodies. And suddenly things didn't feel as heavy. He noticed changes in himself. He listened more carefully during conversations. He reacted with more calmness. He felt less overwhelmed and more grounded. Some nights he would sit with the lights dimmed and let the music fill the room. The melodies created a space where he could think clearly. Sometimes he remembered old memories, sometimes he imagined the future, and sometimes he simply sat in silence, feeling the moment. He didn't realize it at first, but classical music was becoming a part of his daily life. It became a quiet friend, a gentle teacher, a small source of strength. People around him didn't notice the change immediately, but they sensed something different. They saw he looked calmer, more peaceful. Some asked him if he was meditating or doing yoga. He simply smiled and said he was listening to music. Little by little, his collection grew. Not a formal collection yet, but a growing list of pieces that meant something to him. Some pieces made him feel warm, some made him feel hopeful, and some carried a sense of calm he never experienced before. One night, he listened to a long orchestral piece that felt like a full life story. It started quietly, then grew into something powerful, then softened again at the end. As he listened, he felt something inside him wake up. He felt connected to himself, to the world. To the quiet emotions he usually ignored, he realized in that moment that classical music wasn't just a hobby. It was becoming a part of his identity. It was something that helped him understand his own emotions in a simple, natural way. That night, he made a decision. He would not only collect classical music, he would create the greatest collection he could, one that carried real emotion, real calmness, and real meaning. A collection that could be shared with others when the time was right. He didn't know how long it would take. He didn't know where this journey would lead, but he felt ready to begin. And so, with quiet determination and a heart filled with a new kind of hope, he stepped into the first part of his journey, one that started with a single violin piece on a quiet night, but would soon become something much bigger. Something that touched not just his life, but many others too. He didn't know that a simple decision could change the shape of his days. But the more he explored classical music, the more it became a part of his life. What began as a quiet moment on a single night slowly turned into a journey that filled his evenings with curiosity and calm. Part of him felt surprised by how deep the connection had become, and part of him felt like he had discovered something his heart always needed but never asked for. One afternoon, after a long day full of tasks and small frustrations, he found himself walking through the old market street near his place. He usually avoided crowded areas because the noise made him tired. But that day he walked slowly, not in a hurry to reach home. As he passed small shops packed with books, instruments, old records, and forgotten things, he felt a strange pull inside him. It's like something was waiting to be found. A small shop tucked between two larger stores caught his attention. Its wooden signboard was faded, and the windows were full of dust, but something about it felt warm and inviting. When he stepped inside, the bell above the door made a soft sound, and a familiar scent of old paper and wood filled the air. Inside, there were shelves full of vinyl records, cassettes, and CDs stacked in no particular order. The place looked quiet, almost hidden from the world. He was not searching for anything specific, but his eyes wandered through the shelves like someone walking through a memory. There were records of old singers, soundtracks from classic films, and collections of traditional music. But then he found a small section labeled classical. It wasn't large, maybe one shelf, but it felt like a treasure chest. He ran his fingers gently over the cases, picking them up one by one. Most of the recordings looked old, the covers slightly faded, the edges worn. But that only made them feel more real, more alive. He picked a record with a picture of a violin on the front, another with a painting of a quiet river, and a third one with an orchestra frozen mid-dash performance as he held the records. He felt something warm growing in his chest. These were not just recordings. They were stories captured in sound, stories that had touched people long before him. He asked the shopkeeper about them. And the shopkeeper, an older man with a gentle voice, smiled as if he had been waiting for someone to ask. The man told him that many of these recordings were from different countries and different times. Some were rare. Some had been donated by people who spent their lives collecting music. Some had been forgotten on shelves for years. Each record, shopkeeper said, carried a moment in history played by musicians who poured their hearts into every note. He bought 3 records that day. When he reached home, he didn't even change his clothes or check his phone. He sat down, placed the first record into his old player, and let the sound fill the room. The music was rich, deeper than the digital versions he was used to. The slight crackle made it feel warm, almost like sitting by a fireplace. He listened to the full piece without looking away, and when it ended, he lay back with his eyes closed. He felt a peaceful ache inside him, the kind that comes when something touches you deeply. That day marked the beginning of his habit of visiting places where music lived: shops, stalls, markets, and small corners where people kept old valuables. Each time he visited a new place, he hoped he would find something unexpected, something beautiful. One weekend, he found a handwritten list tucked inside an old book of music history at a secondhand bookstore. The list had the names of classical pieces written in neat handwriting, along with small notes like calm morning, thunderstorm feeling, night walk, and warm memory. He didn't know who wrote it, but the list felt personal. Someone had tried to capture feelings with music, just like he was trying to do now. He carefully folded the list and kept it in his pocket. Over the next few days, he searched for the pieces on the list, listening to each one slowly. Some pieces made him feel like he was walking through a peaceful garden. Others felt like standing on a mountain with cold air brushing against his face. Each piece had a unique emotion, a unique story. As he listened, he started understanding that classical music wasn't just one thing. It was a whole world with different colors, moods, and feelings. Some pieces were soft and slow, calming the heart. Others were powerful and dramatic, reminding him of life's challenges. Some had gentle piano notes that felt like early morning sunlight, and others had strong orchestral sounds that felt like waves crashing on rocks every day after work. He spent time exploring this world. He found himself listening with more attention now. He wasn't just hearing the music, he was feeling it. Each piece made him curious about the person who created it, the era it came from, and the emotions that shaped it. He began researching composers, reading stories about their lives and the struggles they faced while creating their music. Some composers wrote their most beautiful pieces during moments of sadness. Others composed when they felt inspired by nature or people they loved. Reading these stories made him appreciate the music even more. One evening, he came across a piano recording that felt so emotional it made him sit completely still. The melody was soft, and it carried a kind of gentle sadness that felt honest. He didn't cry, but he felt his chest tighten as the notes moved from one emotion to another. He understood something important at that moment. Music wasn't meant to be perfect. It was meant to be real. It was meant to express what words couldn't. This understanding made his collection grow with more meaning. He didn't just add pieces he liked. He added pieces that made him feel something calm, warm, hopeful, nostalgic, or even sad in a peaceful way. There were days when he listened to music on long walks in the evening. The streetlights glowed softly, and the buildings looked different when he had music in his ears. Sometimes he slowed down just to match the pace of the track playing. Classical music turned ordinary streets into moving paintings. On other days, he visited music stores where owners kept old CDs stacked in dusty boxes. While searching through those boxes, he sometimes found recordings that were rare, almost forgotten. The owners often looked surprised that someone young was so interested in classical music, but he simply smiled and told them he loved how the music made him feel. As weeks passed, he noticed that his collection wasn't just growing in size. It was growing in depth. Every piece carried a memory where he found it, what he felt when he first heard it, and why he chose to keep it. Sometimes after listening to a powerful piece, he couldn't help but think about how many hands the music had passed through, how many hearts it had touched. How many people had felt comforted or inspired by the same notes he was hearing now. He felt connected to something bigger, something timeless. There were moments when he shared small parts of his journey with acquaintances. He didn't give long explanations, just simple comments like, "I found a beautiful piece today," or "I listened to something peaceful on my walk." People often smiled and asked what he recommended. Slowly, he began sharing tracks with a few people once he thought would help them relax or focus. When they later told him the music helped them feel better or sleep peacefully, he felt a kind of joy he didn't expect. He realized that music was not only helping him, it was helping others too. This inspired him even more. Whenever he discovered a piece that felt meaningful, he saved it in a special folder on his computer. This folder slowly became more organized over time. He added labels like deep calm, emotional, focus, night listening, and peaceful morning. He didn't know he was building a structure. He just followed what felt natural. One rainy evening, he was sitting near the window with a warm cup of tea, listening to a soft cello piece. The rain made soft patterns on the glass, and the streetlights reflected off the wet ground like stars scattered in puddles. The combination of rain and music made him feel deeply peaceful. While listening, he thought about how far he had come from that first night. Back then, he didn't even think much about classical music. Now, it had become part of his days in ways he never imagined. He remembered the shopkeeper, the handwritten list from the bookstore, the old recordings, and the pieces that brought emotions so strong it felt like a physical feeling. He realized that he wasn't just collecting music. He was collecting moments. Moments he wanted to remember. Moments that shaped him. Music had become a quiet friend, guiding him through his days and nights. It had become a way for him to slow down, breathe deeper, and feel life more honestly. And while he still didn't know what the final collection would look like or how long it would take to complete, he knew one thing. Clearly, he was no longer searching only for beautiful music. He was searching for pieces that carried soul, pieces that meant something, pieces that told stories, pieces that reminded him what it meant to feel alive. And this quiet but powerful journey was only just beginning. His journey with classical music had started quietly, but by now it had become a deep part of his everyday life. He could feel it changing the way he thought, the way he felt, and even the way he understood himself. The music was no longer something he listened to only at night or during quiet moments. It had become something he carried with him like a calm breath, something that softened the noise of the world as his collection grew. He began to see patterns in the kinds of pieces he loved the most. Some were filled with gentle sadness, like soft rain falling on an empty street. Some carried hope, rising slowly like morning light. Others were powerful and dramatic, reminding him that life had storms, but also strength. These pieces made him think in new ways. They made him see that even emotions he once avoided had a place and meaning. One early Saturday morning, he decided to take a long walk. The sky was pale and the air cool, the kind of morning that feels fresh and open. He took his headphones with him and played a slow piano piece that had recently become one of his favorites. As he walked through quiet streets, the melody matched the stillness around him, and he felt as if the world was moving gently with each note. He reached a small park he rarely visited. The grass was still wet with dew, and a few people were walking their dogs or jogging. He sat on a wooden bench under a tall tree and closed his eyes as the music continued. The soft wind brushed past his face, carrying the scent of fresh leaves. In that moment, he realized something important. Classical music was not just helping him feel calm. It was helping him feel connected to nature, to people, to himself. It was helping him understand the world in a quieter, kinder way. He opened his eyes and watched a child running after a small red ball. The child laughed with pure joy, and something inside him warmed. The music played softly in his ears, and he felt a sense of simple happiness. He didn't need anything special to feel it. Just the morning, the music, and the small beauty of ordinary life. Over the next days, he paid more attention to small moments like this. A beam of sunlight falling on the floor, the distant sound of a train passing, the smell of warm bread when he walked past a bakery. The soft expressions people made when they were deep in thought. Music had taught him to slow down, to see the world with gentler eyes. One quiet evening, he sat at his desk, listening to a calm string ensemble. While the music played, he began sorting through his collection with more care. He removed duplicates, organized his lists, and added small notes next to some pieces describing how they made him feel. Words like soft morning, deep peace, old memory, and long drive at night filled the screen. The more he organized, the more he realized how personal this journey had become. Each piece carried a part of him now, not just the emotions he felt while listening, but also the memories of where he was when he found it. There was the violin piece he discovered on a rainy night, the orchestra recording he found in the old shop with dusty shelves, the piano melody he first heard while walking through the park. Each track was like a small chapter from his life. He thought back to the handwritten list he found in the old bookstore. Someone long before him had taken the time to write down pieces that captured different moods. That list had helped him discover so many wonderful tracks. He wondered who the person was. Were they someone who also loved music deeply? Did they create that list for themselves or for someone else? Were they still alive? Did they know their list had become a part of a stranger's journey? He imagined someone sitting at a small desk, writing with care, listening to the gentle sound of a piano in the background. Maybe they too were searching for peace or inspiration. He felt grateful for them, even though he didn't know their name. As days passed, he continued to explore different forms of classical music. He discovered pieces played with instruments he had never paid attention to before, such as harp, flute, and cello. He found that every instrument had a voice. Some were soft and gentle, some bright and lively, and others deep and emotional. One night, he stumbled upon a long orchestral piece that began quietly, but grew into something powerful. The sudden rise in the music made him sit up straighter. It felt like watching waves rise on a stormy ocean. The sound felt alive, filled with emotion. When it softened again, he felt a sense of relief, like the calm after a storm. He listened to the entire piece without moving, letting every moment sink in. By the time it ended, he felt as if he had gone on a journey inside the journey. He was already living. This experience made him curious about how orchestras worked. He began reading about how dozens of musicians come together, each playing their part to create one unified sound. He found it beautiful that people with different skills and instruments could create something so powerful together. It reminded him that life, too, was full of people playing different roles, contributing to something bigger. His interest deepened, and he started searching for live performances online. He watched conductors move their hands with passion, guiding musicians like storytellers. The way the instruments blended amazed him. Sometimes the strings carried the melody, sometimes the brass, sometimes the woodwinds. He imagined what it would feel like to sit in a concert hall, surrounded by sound coming from every direction. He had never been to a live orchestra before, but the thought of experiencing music with such richness made him feel excited. One weekend, while browsing online, he found out that a small classical performance was happening in his city. It wasn't a big orchestra, a group of musicians performing in a local hall. The ticket price was small, and the location wasn't far. He hesitated at first, unsure if he would feel out of place, but something inside him encouraged him to go. On the evening of the performance, he reached the hall early. The building was simple, with soft lights and neatly arranged chairs. People from different age groups were slowly taking their seats. Some were alone, some with families, some with friends. He found his seat in the middle row. The stage was close, and he could clearly see the musicians preparing their instruments. The quiet hum of the audience created a warm atmosphere. When the lights dimmed and the first note filled the room, he felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Live music felt different, deeper, more real. The sound wasn't coming from headphones or speakers. It was coming from people right in front of him, moving their hands, breathing, creating. The violin section played softly at first, then the cello joined in, followed by a gentle piano. The harmony felt like a gentle embrace. He closed his eyes for a moment and let the sound fill him completely. As the performance continued, he felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just listening. This was experiencing. This was living inside the music. When the performance ended, the hall erupted in applause. He clapped too, his hands warm and his heart full. Walking out of the hall, he felt a sense of joy he hadn't felt in a long time. That night, as he walked home, he listened to nothing. He wanted the live experience to stay fresh in his mind. Every step felt light. Every thought felt warm. At home, he sat at his desk and looked at his growing collection. He realized that the journey wasn't just about finding music anymore. It was about understanding life through sound. It was about connecting to emotions he once ignored. It was about discovering beauty in simple things. He added new notes to his collection that night. First live performance. Deep warmth, unexpected joy. He didn't need to describe the pieces in detail. The feelings were enough. He now understood that classical music was not just about calmness or relaxation. It was also about growth, discovery, and emotional courage as he closed his notebook. He felt grateful for the music, for the moments, for the quiet transformation happening inside him, and deep inside, he knew his journey was still unfolding. There was so much more to discover, so much more to feel. This was only the beginning of a deeper chapter, one that would take him further into the world of sound, emotion. Shaping the greatest classical music collection he dreamed of creating, he woke up earlier than usual the next morning, feeling the excitement before he could even open his eyes. The sun had not fully risen yet, and there was a soft glow coming through the window. The house was quiet, and he felt that peaceful stillness that only came in the early hours. He lay there for a moment, letting himself enjoy the silence before the rest of the world woke up. It reminded him of the slow, gentle openings of the classical pieces he had been studying. The ones that started like a whisper and later grew into something powerful. He got up, stretched his back, and walked to the small table where he kept his notes. The notebook was open to the page from the previous night. Filled with thoughts about how music touched people without using a single word, he ran his hand over the page and felt motivated to keep going. He had so many stories inside him, and the greatest classical music pieces were helping him understand how to bring all of them to life. He made a cup of tea and stood near the window, watching the slow movement of the sky. The light was spreading softly like a painter gently brushing color across a canvas. Moments like this always made him think about melody, how something simple like a slow rising sun could feel like a gentle tune that made the whole world calmer. After finishing his tea, he set up his small speaker and played another classical piece from the collection. The music filled the room quietly at first, then with more depth as it continued. He sat down, closed his eyes, and listened carefully. He wanted to understand how every part of the music worked together, the soft strings, the warm brass, the calm woodwinds. This time the piece felt like a long walk through a peaceful forest. He imagined himself stepping on soft ground, hearing leaves whisper in the wind as he listened. He thought about how many people in the world lived fast lives and rarely had moments of peace. He wished they could listen to more classical music, not to study it, but to feel it, to let it help them breathe, to let it hold them for a moment. He made a quiet promise to himself that one day he would create something, maybe a project, maybe a collection, maybe a place where people could find calm through music. He grabbed his notebook and began writing down that idea. He wanted to create something that wasn't just notes and facts. He wanted to create something that made people feel understood. Something that made people slow down and remember that life could be soft too. He wrote for a long time, letting his thoughts flow naturally. The more he wrote, the more he discovered about his own life, his childhood, his favorite moments growing up, and even the tough times that shaped him. Music was helping him understand these memories in a new way. He realized that every emotion, joy, sadness, hope, could be found in classical music. It made everything feel more connected. After a while, he took a break and stepped outside for some fresh air. The morning had fully arrived, and the street was becoming lively. People were walking, some heading to work, some jogging, some just enjoying the cool breeze. He watched them for a moment and wondered how many of them had a quiet place inside their hearts, where they kept their favorite memories. And he wondered how many of those memories were tied to music. He walked slowly around the block, letting his mind wander. He thought about how the greatest classical pieces were created by people who had lived their own struggles and dreams. They had felt loneliness, hope, fear, love, and everything in between. Yet they had turned those feelings into music that lasted hundreds of years. He admired how honest they were, how they poured their real stories into their work. By the time he returned home, his mind felt clearer. He sat again in his chair, took a deep breath, and played another piece from the collection. This time, the music had a more dramatic tone. It made him imagine a journey through mountains and storms. He felt his heart responding to the rise and fall of the melody. It was as if the music understood how hard life could be, but also how strong people could become. He picked up his pen again and continued writing. He described how each piece of music felt like a message from someone who lived long ago, telling listeners that they were not alone. He wrote about how music had the power to heal without saying anything directly. It could simply be there, like a friend sitting quietly beside you. Hours passed while he wrote. He didn't notice the time because he was completely lost in the flow of his thoughts. The more he wrote, the more he realized how much he had grown since starting this journey. He wasn't just learning about classical music. He was learning about himself as the afternoon settled in. Took a break and listened again to some of the pieces he had already studied. He smiled as he realized how differently they sounded now. He could hear details he didn't notice before: small rhythms, soft notes, tiny breaths in the music. It reminded him how life also had small details that people often missed. He thought about how people rushed through their days, always moving, always worrying, always trying to keep up with life. But when he listened to classical music, time felt slower. Calm felt natural. Problems felt lighter. He felt more present, more real. The sun began to set, bringing warm golden light into the room. He sat quietly, watching the colors change again. Morning had started with gentle light, and now the day was ending with another soft painting in the sky. It made him feel grateful. It made him feel connected to the world in a quiet but meaningful way. He decided to write about that feeling too. The calm that came from simply watching the sky or listening to a beautiful piece of music. He wanted the people who would one day read his project to feel that calm too. He wanted them to understand what classical music had given him: peace, clarity, and a way to understand his life through sound. He wrote until the evening grew darker. The room was quiet, except for the soft music still playing from the speaker. He let the final notes fade before he closed his notebook for the night. When he finally leaned back in his chair, he felt a soft tiredness, the kind that comes after a meaningful day. He wasn't exhausted. He wasn't overwhelmed. He felt fulfilled. Today had been about learning more than music it had. It's been about discovering the quieter parts of himself that he often overlooked. He looked around the room and smiled. He knew that tomorrow he would continue this journey, exploring more pieces, understanding more emotions, writing more stories. But for now, he simply appreciated the stillness. He turned off the speaker, placed the notebook neatly on the table, and walked to the window one last time. The night sky was peaceful, and the air outside was cool. He took a slow breath and let it out. In that moment, he understood why the greatest classical music collection felt so special. It wasn't just a list of pieces. It wasn't just sound. It was a reminder that life could be calm, meaningful, and deeply human. And as he stood there, he felt ready for whatever the next part of his journey would bring. He woke up the next day feeling a little different, as if something had shifted inside him overnight. There was a gentle quiet in the room, the kind that made him feel more present, more aware of the moment. He sat up slowly and looked around, seeing the notebook on the table, the pen resting beside it, and the speaker that had filled his room with music day after day. All of it felt like companions now, like silent partners who had walked with him throughout this journey. He rubbed his eyes, stretched his arms, and stepped toward the window to pull the curtains slightly. Soft morning light entered the room, washing everything with a pale glow. He took a slow breath and felt grateful to begin another day, surrounded by the music that had changed so much within him. He made himself a warm drink and took a seat at the table. Before opening the notebook, he stayed still for a moment, letting the warmth of the cup settle into his hands. Sometimes, he realized, silence could be just as powerful as music. It held space for thoughts, feelings, memories, and all the things that often stayed hidden beneath the noise of the day. He finally reached for the notebook and opened it. The previous pages were filled with his thoughts about the pieces he had heard, the emotions they brought, and the moments they reminded him of. Every page felt like a piece of himself. He ran his fingers slowly over the writing. Feeling connected to the journey he had taken, he played a new piece from the collection. It started with a soft piano melody, light and warm. The notes drifted through the room like soft ripples of water. He closed his eyes and allowed the music to settle around him. It felt calming, as if the music were gently guiding him back through everything he had experienced. As he listened, he began to think about how much he had changed since he first started exploring this classical music collection. Back then, he had been searching for something peace, maybe, or clarity. He hadn't even known exactly what he was looking for. He just knew he needed something that felt real and honest. Now, he realized he had found more than he expected. The music had shown him how to slow down, how to notice life again, how to reconnect with emotions he had set aside. It had taught him that even quiet moments could hold deep meaning. He opened his notebook to a fresh page and started writing. He wrote about the peace he was hearing now, how it made him imagine a peaceful morning walk in a quiet village, where the air smelled of soft earth and the sound of birds echoed gently. He wrote about how the melody felt like a reminder that life didn't always need to be loud to be beautiful. He continued writing, describing how each part of the journey had shaped him. The early days of listening, when everything felt overwhelming yet refreshing. The quiet afternoons, where he felt his thoughts settling in a new way. The evenings spent watching the sky change colors as music played softly in the background. He realized that classical music had become a kind of mirror for him. It reflected his emotions, his memories, his hopes, and even his fears. It helped him understand himself better because it spoke in a language that didn't need words. After some time, he put down his pen and leaned back in his chair. He let the music play quietly as he stared at the ceiling. He felt calm, but he also felt a gentle ache inside, a bittersweet feeling that came from knowing that this part of his journey was nearing its end. He wasn't sad, though he just understood that endings could feel soft too, like the final note of a long, beautiful piece. He stood up and walked around the room, thinking about what he wanted to do next. He remembered how he had once imagined creating something meaningful, something that could help other people feel the same peace he had felt. The idea still lived inside him, stronger now, clearer now. He walked to his shelf where he kept some old notebooks filled with ideas he had once abandoned. He flipped through them slowly. Those ideas had felt rushed, scattered, incomplete. But now, he understood why. He hadn't been ready back then. He hadn't learned how to listen, not to music and not to himself. But now he had. He went back to his desk and wrote down a new idea, not a rushed one. He wanted to create a space, maybe a project or a series, where people could experience the power of calm. A place where people could slow down and reconnect with their thoughts. A place shaped through music. He didn't know exactly how it would look, or when it would be ready. But that didn't worry him. He knew this journey had taught him patience. He would take his time, just like the composers who took years to create their masterpieces. The day continued slowly. He listened to more pieces from the collection, not to study them now, but to enjoy them. Each one felt like greeting an old friend. Some were gentle, some were powerful, some were emotional, and some were simple. All of them brought something special. As the afternoon sun warmed the room, he sat on the floor with his back against the wall, listening to a piece that reminded him of distant memories. He remembered days when he felt lost and overwhelmed. He remembered evenings where he had hoped for peace, but didn't know where to find it. Back then, he didn't realize that calm could come from something as simple as sitting still and letting music wash over him. He felt thankful for the journey. It had changed the way he looked at life. It had helped him understand that peace didn't always come from fixing everything. Sometimes it came from learning to breathe again. He stayed in that spot for a long time, letting the music guide his thoughts. Eventually, he got up and walked over to the window. Outside, the sky was beginning to change again. Evening was coming, bringing a quiet softness to the world. He opened the window slightly and let the cool air enter the room. It carried the scent of the evening, fresh and calm. He felt the breeze touch his face gently, and he breathed deeply. He thought about how every day of this journey had been different. Some days had been emotional, some peaceful, some full of discovery. But all of them had helped him grow. As he watched the sky darken, he felt a sense of completion settling inside him. Not the kind of completion that ends something, but the kind that begins something new. He walked back to the table, closed the notebook gently, and placed his hand on the cover for a moment. It wasn't just a notebook anymore. It held the story of his journey, the music that shaped him, and the thoughts that had helped him understand his life more clearly. Before turning off the music for the night, he played one last piece. It started boldly, but settled into a softer melody. He listened to every note, letting each one fall into place like pieces of a memory he would always keep. When the final note faded away, he felt peaceful. He turned off the speaker, looked around the room one more time, and smiled softly. He knew this journey wasn't truly ending. Music would stay with him, guiding him, comforting him, reminding him of all the moments that shaped him. And he would carry what he learned into whatever came next. With that quiet thought in his heart, he walked toward the window and looked up at the night sky. The stars were faint but steady, scattered gently across the darkness. He took a slow, deep breath and exhaled quietly. This journey with the greatest classical music collection had not only given him peace, it had given him a new way to see the world. And as he stood there, he knew he was ready for whatever waited ahead.